Hi, I'm Alex, welcome to the channel and thanks for tuning in. So in today's video we're going to be talking about a new SPAC to the channel, Trident Acquisitions Corp, or ticker symbol TDAC. In the last week, TDAC announced their signing of an LOI with lottery.com. In this video we're going to look about everything we know about the deal so far. We're going to look at all the positives and we're going to look at the key risks and the potential mitigants to those. Now, I have seen other people talk about this stock on YouTube, however I haven't seen anyone give the full picture. There are a number of things that are really important to this stock that a lot of people aren't talking about. So in this video we will address those, and the negative ones we will address the mitigants for those. If you don't like videos where we talk about the risks of stocks, then I suggest you click off this one. However, that being said, there's still a lot to be excited about here. If you're new to the channel and you like investor related content, then please smash that subscribe button. As with all my videos, I've put in a lot of work into my research here, so please smash that like button. I'm not a financial advisor, this video is purely for educational and entertainment purposes only, but let's get straight into it. So very recently, TDAC signed an LOI with lottery.com. Now, lottery.com is ultimately a website that enables you to buy lottery tickets online. Lottery.com is providing an online platform enabling people to buy their lottery tickets when previously they had to be physical in-person purchases. So currently they're active in 10 states, with plans to expand it to 10 more, working closely with the regulators in those situations. And currently they have exclusive rights on online ticket sales for the Powerball. As well as this, they also generate revenues from selling data around lottery draws. Now, they sell this data to a number of different publishers, and they collect data on over 600 different lotteries across 38 different countries. Now, this is really interesting and something that would be good to learn more about. The company was founded in 2015, and from the information we have so far from the press release, we know that it's grown incredibly quickly on a revenue basis, just shy of 280%. Now, that's a really impressive figure, but it'd be great to get under the hood and be able to kick the tyres a bit more and understand exactly what's going on. So now, let's look at the key positives. So firstly, I think the sector is very exciting. Lottery.com operates in the online gambling space, a sector which has seen a lot of hype this year, and as more states are legalising different forms of gambling, is becoming a high growth area. This is particularly important as we see states in difficult financial positions. Allowing online gaming introduces a new form of tax revenue for them, and it avoids them having to increase tax rates on existing taxes, which is always an unpopular decision. So I think this is going to drive even further growth in the market. We have seen massive share price growth in a number of other online gaming stocks this year, for example DraftKings and LCA, soon to be GNOG, and that's definitely a positive here. Next up, we should think about the demand, and for online gaming and lotteries in particular, this is very resilient. Gambling is a vice, it's addictive. Previous recessions have shown that gambling and gaming revenues do not decrease in the same way that, say, consumer goods do, for example, during a recession. What's more with lotteries, once you have your regular numbers, you basically have to play them every draw. Imagine if you didn't play your numbers and they were the numbers that came up for the jackpot. This also plays really nicely with the trend of shifting to digitalisation. In part driven by the health crisis, we are seeing a massive shift to digitalisation. And I'm sure in the not too distant future, the thought of actually physically buying a lottery ticket will be one that's quite alien. The thought of having to go to a shop, physically queue up and buy a physical ticket. So ultimately, lottery.com is pulling together these trends quite nicely and is building quite an exciting investment thesis. What's also important is when you look at lottery.com, it has a good and established reputation. It's got a proven business model and it's delivered massive revenue growth. Those are all positives. I will come on to it in a moment, but we do need to know more about the financial profile, and we will find out that detail in the next stage. However, that should be a key focus of our next diligence. Another positive we should draw from the press release is that we understand that actually the lottery.com shareholders are keeping all their proceeds in the transaction. That's a great sign. It shows they're 100% committed to the growth of the stock price of this company, rather than making cash now. So personally, I take a lot of confidence from that. Yes, in the next stage I want to learn more about the transaction structure, but for now that's good, I like seeing that. The management team that have delivered on the strategy so far are also supported by a pretty impressive advisory board. One of particular note, and that may help drive some hype around the stock, is actually the CEO of DraftKings is on the advisory board. At the time of filming, another thing that I do really like about this opportunity, it's not trading that much above the floor price. In SPACs, the price until the merger is completed will not fall below a certain level, and if the transaction doesn't complete, that cash gets returned to shareholders. Ultimately, if the merger wasn't to happen and the SPAC was never to do a deal, that would ultimately mean your downside is protected. Once the merger completes, however, that floor goes away. But until that point, you have the floor price. Now, as is always the case with the SPACs, there is the potential that actually you have the concern the merger won't be approved by shareholders. However, SPACs do also have a certain time period in which they can affect a transaction. Recently, the shareholders of TDAC had to vote to extend that period of time, knowing that the lottery.com deal was on the table. And ultimately, what that gives us is good confidence that there will be a positive vote for the merger should it get to that point. So whilst it is uncommon that shareholders wouldn't vote in favour of the deal, it does mitigate some of that risk. So now let's come on to the risks, or the concerns I have. And when thinking about these and whether to make an investment, it's always worth thinking about what the mitigants to those are. This is a step that every good investor should do, but if you don't like videos which talk about these risks, then you should definitely click off the video now. The first thing that concerns me slightly is just the track record of the SPAC. So TDAC was originally raised as a SPAC to invest in oil and gas ventures. They had some senior management changes, and ultimately that focus has clearly changed. Some members of the team have also successfully completed SPACs before. However, if you look at where they're trading, they're currently not trading particularly well. Now, I know you can't draw parallels to that because it is a completely separate company in a completely separate industry. However, it's something we should definitely keep in mind. I think the next risk, and is probably the biggest risk here, is actually the lack of information we currently have. Now, it's a function of where we are in the process. We just have an LOI. We don't have an investor presentation yet, and that will all come in due course. However, the key things that come from this are ultimately the valuation, and that really drives a lot of the dynamics of the deal. There is the risk that perhaps lottery.com is way overvalued in this transaction. However, one would hope that's not the case given the recent shareholder vote to extend the period of time in which they can make the deal. Additionally, as we learn more, it's important to learn more about the business model. We may find things there that are not as positive as we may have originally thought. It may be a more competitive or a more challenging market than on face value we see it to be. These are all very real risks that may come out during the process as more information is released to shareholders. So it's something that all of us should be aware of. As a result of that, for me, this firmly does sit in a speculative camp. Yes, on paper so far it looks very exciting. There are clearly risks that the company faces, but it's positioned quite well against some of those. However, as we learn more, anything could come out of the woodwork, whether positive or negative, and that can obviously have positive or negative impacts on the share price. Another thing to consider is the timeline. Now, as we saw with LCA, as we've seen with other SPACs in more regulated industries, timelines can typically be longer. You need approval, you need buy-in from more stakeholders, and that takes time. So perhaps this may take a little longer to merge than some of the other SPACs we've seen this year that have been much, much quicker in sectors where you don't have that same regulatory scrutiny. So ultimately where I am now is I'm really keen to learn more about the company, get more information, see an investor presentation, and just learn more. However, where the SPAC market is currently, once that information is publicly available, if it's positive, the share price will reflect that. And so for me, I'm taking a more speculative approach to this. I'm thinking of it more like a game of poker. At this point in time, we just have our hand. We know the SPAC and we know the target, but without much real detail. The next stage where we get more information and we get the investor presentation is the flop. At that point, we're able to form a better investment decision. And ultimately, if it's positive, then the share price should reflect that and we should see a jump in price. At the same time, if it's negative, if the valuation, for example, is way too high or the profitability is very poor, you could see a decrease in the share price. But given that price currently is so close to the floor price, I'm fairly confident in that at this point in time. So I personally, at this point in time, have taken a very small speculative position in this stock. Going back to the poker analogy, you then have the turn. The merger vote date is revealed, and a lot more confidence is gained amongst the investors that the transaction will complete. Again, if this follows the same trend that other SPACs have, you should see at this point an increase in price again. And then finally, you have the river, when the merger completes and the ticker changes. And again, at this point, in the longer term, you should have an increase in share price, provided that actually the company is well valued and is a good investment. You're able to attract investors that aren't able to invest in SPACs given the risk, and then the company can operate without all the stress and the hassle of the transaction. Now, obviously, I know there have been instances where the share price has dipped post-merger. However, those have been fundamentally where the company has been overvalued, and predominantly there hasn't been the demand from new investors coming in to invest in the stock, and that demand has been outweighed by people wanting to sell. With SPACs, that's always a risk, but you have to make your own personal judgment. Are you an investor in the long term, and so if there is a potential dip, does that matter to you? Or are you a short-term investor, so you would have exited your position by the point of merger? So look, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. As we get more information on this stock, of course, I'm going to do more detailed due diligence and get a stronger understanding of the company. I've also got another exciting SPAC to talk about, which again hasn't had much attention. So if you're interested in that, then definitely hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, please smash the like button. It's so helpful in pushing the video to a wider audience. And as always, please let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. I find it so interesting hearing what everyone has to say. Recently, there's been some really interesting discussions and debates in the comment section and some really interesting perspectives raised. So please get involved in that. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.